Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm going to do my review of AEW's Dynamite. Starting off the evening, we have Orange Cassidy coming out to the ring. Cassidy grabs a microphone. He receives a standing ovation from the crowd. Then Cassidy says that championship or no championship, he will be on Dynamite for the foreseeable future. Number one, man, I think this is great for Orange Cassidy. Number one, I think the accomplishment that he conquered with the international championship. I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due. With that being said, I mean, what's next for Orange Cassidy? Is he going to go back after Jon Moxley for the international championship? Are we going to see Orange Cassidy in the TNT picture, or is Orange Cassidy actually going to eventually maybe go after the AEW World Championship, which clearly that's not happening right now with the AEW Grand Slam tournament, which Orange Cassidy's not involved in. But, I mean, sky's the limit for Orange Cassidy, man. He did a hell of a job defending that international championship. He had a phenomenal match with Jon Moxley at All Out when he defended the international championship. Unfortunately, he didn't become victorious, and Jon Moxley became the new international champion. But you got to give credit where credit's due, man. Orange Cassidy did a hell of a job. And I definitely look forward to what's going to happen next with Orange Cassidy. Speaking of the International Championship, it is our first official match of the night. It is Jon Moxley making his first title defense with the International Championship against AR Fox. I thought it was a good matchup. Back and forth matchup between Moxley and AR Fox, with Moxley keeping the pace of the match. Fox then hits a springboard drop kick on Moxley. Moxley gets up and lands multiple yes kicks on Fox in the middle of the ring. Fox then gets up, hits a rolling cutter for a near fall. Fox then hits a moonsault off the apron on Moxley to the outside. Fox then hits a 450 splash off the top rope on Moxley for a near fall. Fox then hits an enziguri on Moxley, but Moxley ultimately hits his signature Death Rider on AR Fox. Pins for the 3. And your winner of the match, and still AEW International Champion, is Jon Moxley. Hats off to Jon Moxley for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the TBS Championship. It is Emi Sakura versus Chris Statlander. I thought this was a really good matchup. Back and forth matchup between Sakura and Statlander, with Sakura keeping the pace of the match. Sakura and Statlander then both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Statlander hitting a devastating lariat on Emi Sakura, which allows Chris Statlander to hit the finish. Pins for the 3. And your winner of the match, and still TBS champion, is Chris Statlander. Hats off to Chris Statlander for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is a tag team matchup. It is Aussie Open versus Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with Jericho and Guevara keeping the pace of the match. Jericho ultimately hits a code breaker for a near fall. Guevara then hits a Spanish fly in the middle of the ring, but Jericho hits a Judas effect. Pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara. Moving on from that, we have an MJF segment. MJF comes down to the ring, grabs a microphone. He praises the crowd. MJF then talks about defending the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships with Adam Cole at All Out. MJF then talks about Grand Slam, and before he says anything else about Grand Slam, Samoa Joe makes his way out to the ring. Joe then mocks MJF. MJF does the same thing. Joe and MJF then get face-to-face. MJF talks about his tryout that he had in NXT. MJF then mocks Regal, talks about knocking him out and sending him back to NXT. And MJF warns Joe that he will do the same thing to him and send Joe also back to NXT. MJF then talks about the first time they had an incident in NXT when Joe had pushed him when Joe was coming out to the ring. MJF then talks about what he's done in AEW and the accomplishments that he's had in AEW. Joe says that he has entered the tournament to possibly face MJF for the AEW World Championship. Joe then attacks MJF. Joe then goes for a muscle buster, but Adam Cole comes out to save MJF. A couple things about this, man. Number one, the stuff that MJF has done, especially when it pertains to him and Adam Cole, has been absolutely phenomenal. Probably one of the best storylines, if not the best storyline right now in wrestling, especially in AEW. This whole thing transpired with Samoa Joe and MJF after what happened at All Out, where Adam Cole and MJF were defending the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships against Dark Order. And then Samoa Joe came out for his match and then pushed MJF when MJF was walking up the ramp, which kind of, had a conflict between MJF and Samoa Joe. And I'm going to just put this out here too, man. I think, the body of work that Samoa Joe's put in AEW, I'm not going to say it's, his all-time best run yet. But he's done a phenomenal job, man, carrying that Ring of Honor Television Championship, kind of putting Ring of Honor on his back, if you ask me. And he's done a hell of a job in Ring of Honor as well as AEW. I'm all for a possible matchup between Samoa Joe and MJF, possibly at Grand Slam, especially with Joe entering the tournament. I think Joe's first matchup is against Jeff Hardy. I think the stars are aligning, man. I think it is going to be either Samoa Joe versus MJF at Grand Slam, or Roderick Strong, who also had a match last night as well for a quarterfinal matchup in the AEW tournament. But I'm all for seeing Samoa Joe, and even, Roderick Strong. I mean, the storylines there too with Strong, especially when it pertains to MJF and Adam Cole. Roderick Strong and Adam Cole are good friends as well. So, I mean, there's a storyline made there as well, and now we have another storyline brewing between Samoa Joe and MJF. So I'm all for it, man. Whether it's Roderick Strong or Samoa Joe, I'm all for it. And hopefully we'll figure that out towards the end of the tournament, and it will all, come to fruition at Grand Slam. Speaking of the tournament, we go into our first AEW Grand Slam tournament quarterfinal matchup. It is Roderick Strong versus Trent Beretta. I thought it was a good matchup. Back and forth matchup between Strong and Beretta, with Strong keeping the pace of the match. Strong and Beretta then both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Trent hitting a Hurricane Rana on Strong. Beretta then hits a half and half on Strong, but Strong ultimately hits the finish, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match and moving on in the AEW's Grand Slam tournament is Roderick Strong. Hats off to Roderick Strong for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we have an Adam Page segment. Adam Page comes out to the ring. He's being interviewed by Tony Schiavone. Page talks about winning the Battle Royal. It took place at the 0 hour at All Out. He talks about winning the $50,000 for his charity, which he donated to the Chicago Education Fund, which I'm all for that. Then Swerve comes out to the ring. Swerve then talks about his coffin match at All Out with Sting and Darby Allin, which was a brutal matchup. And to me, honestly, it was probably one of the matches of the night. Swerve then mocks Page. Swerve says that Page wasn't on the main card at All Out, kind of pokes fun at Adam Page. Swerve says that he believes Page has lost his spot. Swerve says Page has also been handed a silver spoon in AEW, especially when it pertains to him in the Elite. Swerve then calls out Page, and then Brian Cage ends up coming out to the ring to attack Adam Page. Couple of things I want to say about this segment, man, I thought was very interesting was what Swerve had said. Number one, I think this was one of the best promos that Swerve had on AEW since he's been with AEW. I think also with what he was saying had a lot of realism to what he was saying. I mean, Adam Page, I'm a big fan of Adam Page and what he's done in AEW, but can I honestly say Adam Page has kind of fallen off a little bit? Yeah. He's not being really booked in high-profile matches. I mean, like Swerve said, he was booked in the 0 hour, not even really technically on the pay-per-view. I don't know what's going to happen next with Adam Page. I know he's been teaming up with Kenny Omega and dealing with the Bullet Club Gold situation. It looks like Bullet Club Gold is possibly moving on from the whole Kenny Omega situation. I know Kenny Omega pretty much has his hands tied right now with Don Callis and Takeshita. So I'm sure that storyline's far from over. I don't know what's going to happen next with Adam Page, man. I'm hoping Adam Page is going to be hopefully in a predominant storyline. I'm assuming after what happened last night, we're going to get Swerve and Adam Page in the foreseeable future, which, again, is a great storyline from Adam Page, but it does look like Swerve's coming for that spot, man. It looks like Swerve wants to be one of the top guys for AEW, and I think he is one of the top guys in AEW. I think the stuff that he's done in AEW has been absolutely phenomenal. I think the Mogul Embassy is a really good stable. It's way better than what QT Marshall was doing with Nick Camarado and Aaron Solo with the Factory. I think the Mogul Embassy is a strong stable, and it shows. It just goes to show you what they've done in Ring of Honor as well as AEW. And I do think Swerve's severely underrated. I do. I think Swerve could be TNT champion, could be international champion, could be tag team champion, or even world champion. Sky's the limit for Swerve. So it looks like we might get Swerve and Adam Page. The other thing, too, is, and I will touch base on this towards the end of the podcast, is that AEW has a really big pay-per-view coming up here soon with Wrestle Dream. It's going to take place in Seattle, Washington. Obviously Swerve has, lineage to Seattle area as well as Darby Allin. So I can totally see, I would be very shocked to see if Swerve and Darby Allin, those two names, were not on the card for Wrestle Dream. So I'm all for it, man. This gives Adam Page, a decent matchup going into a storyline, and gives him something to do, something that we can all sink our teeth into and kind of figure out what's going to happen with Adam Page, because I feel like he kind of took a back seat to what Kenny and the Elite were doing for quite a while. So look forward to what's going to happen next with Adam Page and Swerve. And then we go into our next match of the night, man. It is the main event of AEW's Dynamite. It is another Grand Slam tournament quarterfinal matchup. It is Darby Allin versus Nick Wayne. I thought it was a great match. Back and forth matchup between Darby Allin and Nick Wayne, with Darby keeping the pace of the match. Darby and Nick Wayne then both exchange in the middle of the ring. Christian Cage is here. Wayne then hits a Hurricane Rana off the apron on Darby Allin. Wayne then hits a frog splash off the top rope to the outside on Darby. Darby then lands a foot stomp. Multiple foot stomps. That referee calls for the bell. And your winner of the match is Darby Allin. Hats off to Darby Allin for getting the win in that matchup. A couple of things I want to say about Dynamite, man, before I get out of here. Was it a solid show? No, it was an okay show at best. You're not going to have great shows every single night. With that being said, I'm anticipating Wrestle Dream, man. I want to see what it's all about. I know Tony Khan has made comments about Wrestle Dream as far as what he would like to see on the card, especially having New Japan talent possibly come over to wrestle on this card, because basically the pay-per-view, Wrestle Dream is kind of paying tribute to the late great Antonio Inoki. So I can totally see New Japan talent coming over to have matches with AEW talent. This might be also a great opportunity, maybe, to see Mercedes Moné in AEW. As far as having a match with AEW talent, I'm all for that. I think that'll be great, especially having that working relationship between AEW and New Japan. It'd be great to see Mercedes Moné in an AEW ring. Now, the other thing I want to take notice on, too, and I'm not saying it will or it won't happen, is Edge. I know Edge is a very hot topic right now. He's currently still with WWE. His contract's coming up towards the end of the month. Could we see him at Wrestle Dream? It's definitely a possibility. I think a lot of people are saying that all the stars are lining for Edge to join AEW, which is still yet to be seen, man. He can still go back to WWE, who knows, but there's a lot of great matches for Edge if he does happen to come over to AEW. He can team up with Christian again. He can go after Kenny Omega, Bryan Danielson. There's a lot of good matches on the table for Edge if he does happen to come over to AEW. As far as the card last night, man, it was a solid card. Emi Sakura, she kind of surprised me last night. And truthfully, honestly, I think it was one of Chris Statlander's toughest opponents she's had since she's won the TBS Championship. I thought for a minute Sakura, she was really taking it to Chris Statlander in that matchup, and it looked like, Statlander was kind of taken by surprise. So it was a great challenge for Statlander with that TBS Championship. Orange Cassidy as well, man. Orange Cassidy, I mentioned this earlier in the podcast. I think Orange Cassidy is one of those guys who's going to be a lifer for AEW. He's a great fan base, man, for Orange Cassidy. And like I said, he's done a hell of a job defending the AEW International Championship. And right now, sky's the limit for Orange Cassidy, man. Nobody really knows what's going to be next for Orange Cassidy. Is he going to go after the AEW World Championship, the TNT Championship? It's still yet to be known, or yet to be seen, if you will, for what Orange Cassidy's going to do next. So I'm all for that. John Moxley did a hell of a job last night as well, defending the International Championship against AR Fox. Jericho and Guevara looks like they still have issues, and I think Guevara is going to have some comments about Jericho on Rampage. So still yet to be seen on what he's going to say about Jericho moving forward. The MJF segment was one of the biggest things about last night, him and Samoa Joe getting face-to-face, and the back-and-forth comments made between Joe and MJF. And like I told you guys, man, I'm all for Joe versus MJF at Grand Slam for the AEW World Championship. I think what MJF's done on AEW, he's putting that company on his back. He's in probably the biggest storyline right now in all of professional wrestling when it pertains to him and Adam Cole. But I'm all for it, man. And it's the same thing with Samoa Joe, man. Samoa Joe's done a hell of a job defending the Ring of Honor Television Championship. He's pretty much putting Ring of Honor on his back and carrying the name of Ring of Honor, if you will. And I'm all for a possible matchup between MJF and Samoa Joe. And lastly, like I said earlier, man, the Adam Page segment. Him and Swerve. I think Swerve had a lot of realism in the things that he was saying to Adam Page. I think Swerve wants to be the top dog in AEW, and I'm not against it, man. I think the body of work that he's put in AEW, he's had phenomenal matches with, Darby Allin, and, and not only, it's not even just Darby Allin. The tag team matches that he's had, the storyline he had with Keith Lee, that's still, to me, yet to be finished. He's had phenomenal matches, man. Mogul Embassy is one of those great stables that AEW has. And I definitely look forward to a matchup possibly between Swerve and Adam Page. But with that being said, man, this is my review of AEW's Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.